As things wind down this evening, we turn our attention away from numbers and try to put it into a little bit of context. And joining us on the set to help with that, as he regularly does, Dave McCuan from Sonoma State University, political science professor and all-around pundit. What do you make of all of this nonsense?
I think it was more interesting to talk about apples and farmers markets than most of the things that happened tonight, except maybe the Connolly-Adams race, a very interesting race.
How about District 5, the Scheuer Judy Arnold race? Officially, they finished counting the votes. Officially, Arnold's 140 votes ahead.
Wow.
But, as our counter, Bruce Raful, has pointed out, this number is not final because little odds and ends come in the next week. And at this number, you do a recount.
Right, and so what we're going to see are a few races that are interesting, but given a low voter turnout, low interest primary, we see a number of Republicans that have placed second in the top two system, which in 2012 we saw a lot of party-on-party fights, but we saw twice as many Republicans as Democrats facing that. We thought there'd be more Dem-on-Dem violence coming out of this primary. We haven't seen that so far. We've seen more traditional.
That's probably the biggest surprise of the night, isn't it?
Probably, because the hope when that was passed, as you both know, is that the Republicans were hoping that Dems would take on Dems, and that's happened some, but not to the degree in which they thought would happen.
It only happens when the Republicans are a factor.
That's right. That's
well, the
right.
10th district, though, the Assembly District, Southern Marin, Southern Sonoma, all of Marin, Republican comes in second.
That's right.
Democrats divided it up. I think an awful lot of people would have felt that Diana Conti, perhaps, would have been the second place finisher.
That's right, and she, had some early resources. Karlstrom really didn't make a dent in that race. Neither did Jacoby, and Mark Levine, the incumbent who won in a big election in 2012, did surprisingly well tonight. Yeah. He would do strong, but he did better than that. And also Steve Glazer running behind in the East Bay right now against Sobrante.
Tim Sobrante.
Yeah, exactly. And so Bill Dodd doing very well in AD4. So there are a number of things happening in the Democratic Party tent that are important statewide, and this will impact what Jerry Brown decides to do, but not to the extent that we thought we would see coming out of this election.
We've been focused very much here on the North Bay, and you've been, I think, taking a big picture statewide look. Is the supermajority on the way back, or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell, and Democrats don't have they don't have a lot of wiggle room in this. If they lose one seat in the Assembly, net loss of one seat into the fall in November, they lose the supermajority there. Given what's happened in the state Senate with people in and out of federal indictment and jail, those seats are nominally Democratic seats, but the supermajority could be at risk there. What we thought would happen is that a different type of Democrat would be elected. That's happened with a mixed view, but we haven't seen the Democratic tent really grow that much. We were looking at a situation that might have been like the Gang of Five that Willie Brown dealt with in the late 1980s, but that hasn't materialized. And Republicans really, I think, are looking for a message. If Kashkari wins over Tim Donnelly, it looks like that will happen. Jerry Brown and Neil Kashkari will have a very interesting conversation, but obviously Jerry Brown will win that election going away.
I don't think Jerry Brown would be tremendously disappointed if the Democrats did not have a two-third majority in the legislature.
He would probably be great because he has to do things like the Rainy Day Fund, high-speed rail, put a couple of straws down across the middle of California to deliver water. There's some fights that are going to be very difficult for him next year.
Statewide, is there any race where the Republican, state constitutional office, any race where the Republican actually has a chance or can make a competitive race?
Great question. Yes, absolutely. In the controller's race, Swearingen,
the mayor of Fresno.
Mayor Fresno will probably be the top vote getter. Part of LA has come in. Not all of LA has come in so far, but that will probably be the top vote getter. So you want to pay very close attention to what's happening there. And obviously what happens with the SPI, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, with Torlakson and Tuck. That's an important race as well. So Democrats ran the table last time. That's unlikely to be repeated in November.
Interesting to see John Perez, the Speaker of the Assembly, outgoing Speaker of the Assembly, out.
He's probably out and without a job for some time as someone who has been really a core labor guy, someone who backed very closely and very well Michael Allen in that 10th district last time, and now he really is a person without an office at some level. It's a changing of the guard in California for Democrats, and I think that's a big story coming out of this election.
It seems to me, in the North Bay at least, there's been kind of a youth movement in the statewide offices. Is that carrying on statewide? Or is
I mean, look, Senator Feinstein is closer to being done than not. Senator Boxer was closer to being done than not. Talked to Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom earlier this evening, and he obviously is someone who's positioning himself moving forward. Kashkari on the Republican side, and other Republicans kind of position themselves. But really there's a changing of the guard that we thought would happen faster on the Republican side than on the Democratic side, but it's happening in the Democratic coalition very quickly. Bill Lockyer's no longer around. A lot of people are leaving Sacramento, and there is a generational change that's really important and going to impact California moving forward.
Look at the North Way. Mark Levine is a young guy. Mike McGuire is a young guy. Jim Wood is a young guy.
That's correct. There really is this moment of change that we see about every 10 to 20 years, but it's happening up and down the ballot and throughout California. That's the big thing.
Looking ahead to November, as Dick was mentioning a moment ago, that's when the ballot gets crowded with all the initiatives. Which ones are you thinking are going to be the most interesting?
Well, we will have a rich, full ballot.
There's some more to be determined.
That's correct. And as we look forward for what's going to be on the ballot, many of the issues are going to be passed through. So marijuana probably isn't on the ballot. Pension reform probably isn't on the ballot. Sure, Labor would love to have pension reform on the ballot because it draws their voters out. But there will probably be a number of tax and fiscal measures. There'll be a lot of social, cultural issues, some things related to abortion, for example, to draw some voters out. But the primary electorate in California, whiter, more affluent, that traditional electorate, the hope by many Republicans is some of that will spill over into November because there'll be a ho-hum gubernatorial race because Jerry Brown will win that race. And so Republicans are actually trying to hope to pump up their turnout in November when normally they don't do as well. And that could, there'll be ballot measures on the ballot that will pump that up because they add about 5 percentage points to the overall turnout figure.
Coming back to the North Bay,
Sure.
Marin County, 3-term incumbent supervisor, easily defeated.
Easily defeated.
2-term incumbent supervisor. Tonight, it's a tie, virtual tie.
Right.
She's ahead by 140 votes, and not every vote's been counted. And there could be a recount. Sonoma County, David Rabbit wins in a landslide.
Right.
And Mike McGuire is the Sonoma supervisor.
Sure.
He's, by acclamation, he's sent off to the state senate virtually. Why the difference? Marin County, clearly there was a comment about the Board of Supervisors being made.
Housing is a big deal. Obviously, that was very contentious, and I think that there's been a change in how the board in Marin has approached voters and how they've dealt with voters. You've written about this, you've talked about this, and it's putting off voters as an office holder that really will turn them off. That's been a big component of this election. It's the tone of what's happening in Marin that's different than in Sonoma. And Sonoma likes, both these counties like to fight with one another, but it's that tone of difference for how you're treating voters, I think, that really rebounded against Adams and could hurt Arnold, or at least make that race closer than it otherwise would have been.
100 votes, 140 votes. It would seem to me it's also, if I was an incumbent supervisor running 2 years hence in Marin County, I would be extremely nervous tonight. And if I was somebody who's had an outside chance of thinking, yeah, I might like to serve,
that's right,
might be time to think about moving.
And also, this is exactly the set of circumstances that led to someone like Damon Connolly jumping into, leaping into the race. And so, if you are looking 2 years hence, that's right. It's going to be tough sledding.
The next level of Damon Connolly is out there.
That's correct. Probably at a school board or some local government.
City council.
That's right.
Any observations you want to make on our North County supervisor race here in Sonoma County?
It's not surprising to me that Deb Fudge comes. I mean, the only race really going in Sonoma County, the top race, I should say, really was that supervisorial 4 district. And it's not a surprise that Deb would get the most votes. And then Gore would be second. Gore probably gathers more of the votes of the other candidates. Fudge is closer to her ceiling than the other candidates.
Why is that?
Well, that's in terms of the progressives, in terms of labor, in terms of the coalition. So what Deb has to do is broaden that so she can grab some of those Fapiano and Churchill voters and some of the other voters that nominally have been out, the decline to state, those types of voters, the independent, no party preference voters in that particular district. Gore probably has more upside or ceiling. Deb is closer to that ceiling, so that should be a very close race.
She's more of a known quantity. Gore has a lot of introducing yet to do.
He still has a lot of introducing to do, and he can raise a lot of money. That's been evident so far. But Deb has also run twice before, so now that she's in her 3rd time, she's got that experience. So that race really shapes up to be a gigantic battle like what we've seen, or at least we thought we were going to see with Adams and Connolly.
Well, Dave, thanks very much for being with you. We appreciate your insights as always, and look forward to talking to you more the next time around.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick look at the races here before we sum things up for the evening. So let's quickly recap the races we've been following. Again, the count is increasing, but the numbers aren't changing much in the 4th State Assembly District race.
You know, when you get to a certain percentage, this is 52%, things don't break very much. It tends to be very consistent. And so it's going to be a Democrat, well, It's still going to be a Democrat-Republican race. Phil Dodd, the Democrat, against Charles Schlott, the Republican, in the district which runs from Santa Rosa all the way to Davis.
In the 10th Assembly District race, as we've been talking about all night, it has been Mark Levine out of the gate, and he is continuing to hold that large lead. We expect he will be back with us in November and will probably be facing Greg Allen as his likely challenger, although that one is narrowing a little bit.
Yeah, Allen's the Republican. It's a blue district. This is the best case scenario for Mark Levine in an overwhelmingly blue 10th district against Greg Allen, decent guy. The Democrats have no choice. They've been split before, but they have no choice now but to go for Levine in November.
The other races we've been following quickly, the district attorney race here in Sonoma County has been unchanged essentially from the get-go. Likewise, we're looking at the controller tax collector race, and that too has started out kind of lopsided and is staying at the same level, although the number of ballots being counted now is increasing slightly. We are also looking at some of the other races as being more or less static. We saw Jim Wood is the leading candidate in his race, Mike McGuire running away with his race. By this point in the evening, not a lot of suspense left.
No, it's not. We have to mention, because we face this every year, and it's always something that drives me nuts on, is we now have virtually 100% of the Marin County vote counted at 10:40. Nice, good job. Elaine Ganault, County Registrar of Voters. She deserves a tip of the hat. Count all the votes. Sonoma County, we're at what percentage?
We're at 12.
12%. So, and don't tell me it's a bigger county or it's more rural. It's just, there's a desire in one county to be quick and accurate. And talk to the prior registrar in Sonoma County, the desire is to be accurate, and speed is not a factor.
And we're seeing that once again this evening. Joining us on the set, Bruce Raful, my namesake here, and we have given you credit as the evening progressed in anticipating the close race in that North Marin County Supervisor District. Why did you think that was going to be so tight?
Well, I think if you drove around Novato and you saw the Schroers, people were working very hard. They were very passionate about their candidate, and Judy ran a very safe race, probably not a race where she was the aggressor. Schroer was the aggressor. I think we've mentioned that this race is not over tonight. There's only 140 vote difference between the two, and there's lots of provisional votes to count. So this race will go on for probably another 2 or 3 weeks. I do want to say that we do have a winner in one race that we can project right now, and that is because we're the station that covers everything.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Bashar Assad has won re-election in Syria.
Oh, wow.
I know that's probably
right.
a shock to your viewers, but
Yeah,
Assad has once again been re-elected in Syria.
And his get-out-the-vote operation is
It was
quite
terrific.
impressive.
Well, he got almost 102% of the vote, so it was very good get out
You
the
don't
vote.
vote there. You don't get a guy ringing
That's
the
a little of
doorbell.
a slip from last time, wasn't it?
Exactly. So there are a lot of interesting races.
What happened to Mississippi?
They're going to a runoff. The incumbent lost. But
Cat Cochran lost?
because there's 2% went to a third-party guy, they're going to run it off again.
What do you mean, it happened in November?
No, there's some kind of a runoff system in Mississippi. But the incumbent, Thad Cochran, lost to a Tea Party candidate.
It just goes to show that there's no end to politics to be talked about on any election night, but we have run out of time for our time tonight. We want to thank all the candidates and other guests who've been part of the program this evening for their thoughts and their time. Special thanks also to the many volunteers on the technical crew and the support team who make everything work smoothly behind the cameras and behind the scenes. We also need to acknowledge the fine work contributed by Danielle Venton. Her update from San Rafael was an important part of the program. So on behalf of all of them, my partner in politics here, Dick Spotswood, and we thank you for watching. I'm Bruce Robinson, reminding you can find a summary of the final tallies on the North Bay Report tomorrow morning. Hear that on KRCB FM, Radio 91. It'll also be online at krcb.org. And we'll be posting the best of tonight's interviews on our website as well at krcb.org/election. That'll do it for the program this evening. With Dick Spotswood, I'm Bruce Robinson. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you again in November.
Good night, folks.